And is there something I can do if they're just calling me and hounding me? Is there something that I can do to get them to stop?
Yes, you can actually, and this isn't limited to a 30-day period. You can write a letter saying, please cease communication. Please don't contact me anymore. You send them that letter, certified return receipt. You send the copy by first-class mail with a certificate of mailing. So a certificate of mailing is an extra 90 cents. Spend the 90 cents. And when they receive that letter, they have to cease communication.
Okay.
If they don't cease communication, then you can go ahead and sue them.
Okay. And maybe you could tell our viewers, where are you getting all these rules from? Is there a law or?
Well, yes, there is a law. There's the Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act,
Okay.
which is virtually the only protection you have against debt collectors in New York State. A lot of the other laws, only the Attorney General can sue under.
Okay.
The Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, everyone can bring a lawsuit for violation of that law.
Okay. So for our viewers, what we're really talking about today is how to recognize what are your rights under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and how to recognize when those rights are being violated, and what you can do to protect yourself.
Yes.
One thing that I've heard is that the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act controls how a debt collector can contact you. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it does. First of all, debt collectors cannot call at really bizarre hours. They can't call at 7 in the morning. They have to start calling at 8 a.m. They can't call you after 9. They can't call you after 9 p.m. either. If they're making phone calls to you at these bizarre hours, then you've got a claim against them, and you should find an attorney who does this kind of work. In addition, if they contact you at work, and that's not good for you, you tell them that my employer doesn't allow these calls at work. And many people's employers, they will get in serious trouble if they keep getting calls like this at work. And the debt collectors know this. The other thing is they can't speak with third parties.
Okay.
They can't start discussing your debts with your employer. They can't start discussing them with your children. They can discuss them with your spouse. That's one of the exceptions.
Okay.
They can't discuss it with your parents. They can't discuss it with your friends, with your neighbors. The truth is, the debt collectors work on commission. They routinely violate these laws. They routinely contact your boss. They routinely contact your neighbors. They'll routinely try and publicly humiliate you because they know that there's a motto they have. They know that persistence defeats resistance. Persistence breaks resistance. The more miserable they can make your life, the more money they can get out of you.
Wow. And one thing that I've always wondered is about the things that debt collectors say to people. What kinds of statements by debt collectors would violate the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act?
A very common one that we see all the time. Threats of having the person arrested, threats of pressing criminal charges. They have no intention of bringing criminal charges. They have no basis for criminal charges. You have not committed a crime when you charge on your credit card. There's no intent to defraud there. There's nothing. They've been handing out credit cards like candy for years now. They give them to college students. They give them, there are even stories about the family dog receiving a credit card. They'll give them to 8-year-old kids. You don't have to do much to get a credit card. You just have to have a pulse, basically. And they want those massive interest rates. And this is why we have this debt problem in this country. They're just handing out bad credit, and that's what's happening. It's not a crime to have charged on your credit card, but they will routinely threaten imprisonment. They'll threaten to contact your employers. Very frequently, they'll threaten lawsuits on debts that are beyond the statute of limitations. So in other words, the debt is 8 years old. You haven't heard anything about it. They'll get on the phone and start threatening to sue over it. Or start threatening to press criminal charges over an 8-year-old debt that everyone's forgotten about. You don't even have the paperwork, and they'll make the threats. Other things, they'll definitely threaten to contact your employers. There have been, I remember reading in one complaint, it was a debt owed to a funeral home. It's not my case. this is just what I read in a complaint that was filed with the courts. They threatened to dig up the bodies and bring them to the person's house if they didn't pay the debt.
Oh my goodness.
Okay?
Wow.
So they will not hesitate. These are not the nicest people in the world. I guess they serve some function in society, but...
What about statements like, we'll take your SSI, we'll make you pay our lawyer's fees, we're going to take the furniture in your house?
Those actually, funny you should mention it, those are also very common. They threaten to come and to show up at your doorstep, walk into your apartment, and let's say you owe $2,000, they'll threaten to take $2,000 worth of items around the apartment. Very common threat. Completely empty threat.
Okay.
No one's coming in to take your essentials. Frequently, they'll threaten lawsuits over like $150 debts.
Okay,
They have no intention of proceeding on a $150 debt.
And what about, I feel like sometimes debt collectors will make these sort of tricky statements, like they might say that the debt is really bigger than it is, or they might pretend they work at a lawyer's office when they really don't. Things like that.
I've had that happen.
And
there's a company down south that the name of their company sounded like a lawyer's name, but it ended with INC. INC is an ordinary corporation. They left off the INC on all their letters so that it looked just like the name of a law partnership. And then they started leaving messages on my client's answering machine saying, we're calling from the law office of blank, blank, and blank. And we'll say, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Okay? It's a little facetious. But blank, blank, and blank, and we're calling about your debt. Or they'll pretend to be inspectors. They'll pretend to be government officers.
oh,
All these things are illegal. When I've had cases like this, I love when they leave messages on the answering machine because all you have to do is present that and you've won your case. And those cases are worth money. And you can find a lawyer who does this kind of work.
okay. Well, maybe that brings me to one of the most important points of this program, and that is how you defend yourself against debt collection abuses. And I'd like to start by just asking a very basic question because I know that this can be so overwhelming for so many people. Is it worth it to fight against them?
Absolutely. You can't let these people get away with us. You have to fight back. And fighting back does have an effect. I brought a lot of class actions under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. It's very rare to see violations in writing now. But now the battle's gone to a different stage. The battle's gone to a different battlefront. You have to fight back on the telephone now. Now they're calling people on the telephone and making these threats. You know, making the threats of arrest, making the threats, oh, this is the brand new one, that you can no longer declare bankruptcy. That's a new threat. The bankruptcy laws have gotten more difficult and more expensive, but they will tell you that you cannot declare bankruptcy anymore. That's been eliminated by Congress. That is a lie.
Good to know.
Frankly, best ways to fight back, do everything in writing with these people, with a debt collector. Never agree to anything without some kind of written agreement. It's got to be confirmed in writing. Second, never talk to these people without a tape recorder going.
Okay. And a tape recorder, how does a person get a tape recorder?
Radio Shack. Go over to the local Radio Shack, tell them you need to record telephone calls. They'll tell you how to go about doing it.
Okay.
They have all the equipment necessary. Simple tape recorder, simple $30, $40 tape recorder, $6, $7 piece of equipment, a suction cup just to hook up to your phone, and you can record those calls.